Good morning. I won't touch the mic. I have the pleasure of introducing Dan Rizzuto. Dan Rizzuto is currently program manager for the DARPA RAM project, but more interestingly to this audience, he's like the brains and engine behind a Formula One team. Uniquely in this project, both Dan Rizzuto and Mike Kahana, the primary investigator, have brought together industry collaborators, government research, and I think 7 or 8 universities working together on this Restore Active Memory project. So he's going to take us through this data and wonderful journey on how actually, and really team analysis of data is actually coming to a product in probably in 2 to 4 years time frame. So Dan.
Okay, pleasure to be here. Good morning. So, yeah, as Ash mentioned, I'm the project director for the RAM project here at the University of Pennsylvania. And full disclosure, I'm also the co-founder of VIA Therapeutics, which is a company that we've instantiated in order to commercialize the therapy of neurostimulation for memory disorders. So this, of course, is funded through DARPA. We're very grateful for the funding that DARPA has provided. RAM is a 4-year, $30 million effort to develop implantable brain stimulation therapies for patients with memory disorders, particularly with traumatic brain injury, but this technology that we're developing could be applied to a broad variety of memory disorders, including Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, traumatic brain injury, encephalitis, etc. This is also part of the President Obama's Brain Initiative. So while we're very interested in ultimately working with memory disordered populations, due to the early stage of the development of this technology, we are working with patients with epilepsy who are temporarily implanted with electrodes on the surface of their brain and in deep brain areas. And they're implanted typically for about 1 to 3 weeks. And during this period, while they're in the hospital, we administer memory mapping studies, cognitive tests, we do brain recording and stimulation. And the primary risk of participating in this study is the risk of seizure. And it's pretty low, and we mitigate this pretty well. So, as Ash mentioned, RAM is very much team neuroscience, and the slide didn't present very well, but it does take a village to do this type of cutting-edge neurotechnology development. We have 8 clinical centers around the country that are participating. Jefferson University, thank you Ash, in Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, UT Southwestern in Dallas, NIH, Mayo Clinic, Columbia University, and Dartmouth and Emory. We also have 2 medical device collaborators that are helping us develop the next generation of tools for memory mapping studies, including Medtronic, who's developing an external neurostimulation system, and Lawrence Livermore National Labs, who is developing the next generation high-definition lead that we'll be using for recording and stimulation. And you'll hear more about that in the next talk from Dr. Tolosa. So RAM is very much big neuroscience. Over the past 2 years, we've enrolled over 200 subjects with implanted electrodes, and we've administered over 1,000 memory mapping sessions and collected data from over 20,000 electrode contacts throughout the brain. This video shows the coverage that we're getting across all of these 200 subjects. And in fact, this is just showing the cortical coverage. It doesn't even represent the subcortical coverage that we're getting as part of this project. And we've publicly released the largest human intracranial brain recording and stimulation data set ever produced. This is freely available on our website that you can download. So how do we study human memory? We study it using a task called delayed free recall. And delayed free recall is a very sensitive, it is in fact the most sensitive assay of human memory that is known at this time. And it's typically used to evaluate Alzheimer's progression in what's known as the California Verbal Learning Test. So the free recall task has 3 phases. There's an encoding phase, a distractor phase and a recall phase. During encoding, words are presented one at a time on the screen for about 1.5 seconds each. Then patients do a math distractor task to prevent them from rehearsing that list. And then we test their recall by having them recall as many words as they can from the preceding list. So a typical session, each list includes 12 words, 25 lists per session, takes about an hour, and so far we've had over 100 subjects participate in these record-only memory mapping sessions where we identify the biomarkers, the electrophysiological biomarkers in the brain that predict whether a subject will remember or not remember a particular word. And we use these biomarkers to guide the development of our stimulation protocols and to optimize the delivery of therapy to enhance memory. So on that note, we use stimulation to modulate human memory performance. 36 of our subjects participated in this memory mapping with stimulation. In a given stimulation session, half of the lists include stimulation and half do not. So this is very much a within-subject, well-controlled study. We're comparing the subject's own performance in the same session for those lists that have stimulation and those lists that do not have stimulation. And in those stim lists, half of the words were stimulated, 2 on, 2 off, 2 on, 2 off, etc., and half of the words were not stimulated. So this slide shows that brain stimulation does modulate human memory performance. This is a histogram showing the population of subjects, those 36 some odd subjects that participated in this. What you're seeing here is that the mean of the population, right, on the x-axis is change in recall performance. The mean is slightly negative. What this is showing is that, in general, stimulation is more likely to impair memory than it is to enhance. But if you look at the distribution as a whole, what we're seeing is that there are subjects who do have this enhancement effect towards the right-hand side of this histogram. So in the first phase of the study, we found a knob that we were able to dial up or dial down human memory using electrical brain stimulation. Now, of course, this plot is hiding a lot of variability. Coming into this study, we didn't have good hypotheses about where would be the optimal location to stimulate. And so what we found was that as you might expect, this thing is no longer working. Can we advance the slide? Much like real estate, location, location, location. So the effect of stimulation depends critically on location. If we unpack that previous histogram and break it out by location of stimulation, that's where things start getting really interesting. And so what we're showing here is 4 different regions that we stimulated and the effects. And now the effect is on the y-axis, right? Change in performance with stimulation. So stimulating parahippocampal cortex, PH, mixed bag trend towards impairment. Stimulating hippocampus, not a mixed bag, very clearly an impairment effect. Stimulating region X, and you'll forgive me if I don't disclose exactly where this region is at this conference. Clear evidence of enhancement in region X, which is in the temporal lobe. And then prefrontal cortex, also a mixed bag, but a trend towards impairment. So we're showing that there's one particular area in the temporal lobe that is superior for gaining these enhancement effects in human memory performance. So what I'm going to show you now is a video of one of our patients. Again, these patients are in the hospital. You're going to see him encoding a list of words, doing a math distractor, and then recalling that list of words. And if you could press play on the video, the words presented in white are words he's seeing on the screen. When they're in yellow, there's a stimulation that's being applied to region X. So again, there's 12 words that are being encoded. The tones are each time he completes a math problem. Now he's going to recall. He just recalled all 12 items from a 12-item list.
Okay. Oh, that's...
And his comment at the end was very telling. He said, I had a good picture in my head. I could just see. He was able to vibrantly visualize the words as they were being presented to him on the screen. So, of course, that's one list. This is his performance overall. With no stimulation, he was recalling about 6.5 items per list. With stimulation of region X, he was recalling over 8 items per list, and with stimulation of region Y, which is also in the temporal lobe, but a different region in the temporal lobe, he was slightly impaired, not significantly, but he obviously did not gain any benefit from stimulation of the second region in the temporal lobe. So we're all very excited about the potential for this type of therapy. And, I think there are a lot of potential applications for this type of approach from, of course, we're starting out with memory, but this could then be applied to other areas of cognitive function, such as focus and attention. And where we're going next in this project is to roll out a new lead that we'll be using in our patients that has not only the standard ECOG contacts, for those of you that are familiar with epilepsy localization, but it also has high resolution, high definition micro ECOG contacts that will give us unprecedented access to the neural circuits in the temporal lobe that underlie human memory. And of course, Vanessa Tolosa will be telling you more about this in the next talk, and we're anticipating regulatory approval in Q3 of this year. And all of this, of course, is moving towards a vision of a fully implantable neurostimulation device for patients with memory impairments. You can see here there are a variety of leads placed both cortically and subcortically in the patient. You have 2 grids, potentially 2 depth electrodes. There would be a cranial implant that would be sensing and have the stimulation engine, would have RF transmission for data and power, and then a system calibration interface that the physician could use in the clinic to configure the system, calibrate the algorithms that are being used specifically for each patient. And you might envision the patient coming to the clinic, to their neurologist clinic, maybe every 6 months to get a tune-up for the algorithms and make sure that the device was working appropriately. So that's DARPA RAM. Thank you very much.